Hey, what's up guys, it's Apollo Uchiha here, back with the next part of What If Naruto Was Reunited with his family. Now before continuing this, if you haven't then please do leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you like the content of this channel, and without further ado, let's continue with our story. Our story continues. Hayate called the final fight as he announced Lee's victorious. The fight following Naruto's had been fairly quick. Sakura had gone after her blonde teammate and defeated one of Kabuto's teammates soundly. The fight had not been long at all, something Kakashi had noted as odd from the stands. His cannon ultimately didn't care though. With her victory, Team 7 was the only complete team to make it through the preliminaries. Following Sakura had been Dosu's versus Choji. Despite some motivation from his sensei, Choji was bested in the end. He had put up quite the fight, nearly crushing Dosu into a wall and almost rolling over the Otonin on numerous occasions, but a well-placed strike with Dosu's melody arm shut the Akamichi down for good. He was taken back up to the stands by Shikamaru when he would eventually wake up later on. Gaara had gone next. Hayate had managed to stop the Sunajin Cherokee from killing the last of Kabuto's teammate, but the young guy's legs were crushed and deemed impossible to heal. Gaara went back to the stands leaking killer intent and irritation at the lost kill. Shikamaru was next. He took on Kin of Oto. For a while it seems as though she had the upper hand, but Shikamaru showed his true colors by the end of the fight. Despite his laziness, he had an excellent mind and used it well. The end of the match saw Kin knocking herself out due to shadow possession after Shikamaru had maneuvered her towards the wall. She had a raging headache when she finally woke up. The last fight had been Lee's, of course. Kankuro thought he'd win the fight in the back as he kept Lee at range. They all changed when Lee removed his weights hidden beneath his leg warmers. In a blaze of speed, he tore past Kankuro's puppet and delivered such a devastating blow to the puppeteer that he was knocked unconscious, despite having been safely controlling his puppet from his hiding spot on its back. With the last fight out of the way, the shinobi that would be facing off in the true third round was decided. As we go towards Naruto the next day, Naruto fiddled with his hair, attempting to make it look like a little more like his father. It didn't matter. Kushina had told him to treat his little outing with Hinata as a date. As far as he was aware, it wasn't one. He told his mother as much. She didn't care. His mother was rather forceful that way. Naruto had come to understand Minato held a lot of authority in the village and in times of trouble, but as long as everything was calm, Kushina's word was law in the house. Between the two of them, she had just more dominant personality. He supposed that made his father even more frightening in a way. He was Hokage after all. To shift from such calmness and unthreatening behavior to one-man army was unsettling. "Are you ready or not, Naru?" called Kushina from downstairs. You don't want to be late." Naruto knew that. Kushina had made sure to drill how to act into him. He still didn't think it was a date though. Naruto would told him if it was, right? Kushina said that was no excuse to not treat it like fun. Apparently girls like being treated special like that. If no one else was going to be there aside from the two of them, then he needed to make sure Hinata felt special. Naruto wasn't still sure about what Kushina was saying, but he wasn't about to question her. Besides, his mom was a girl, so she should know about what she's talking about, right? "I'm coming down now," Naruto called back as he abandoned his hair and bolted down the stairs. His parents were waiting for him in the living room. As soon as he stepped through the threshold, there was a flash that had Naruto blinking away, bright spots in his vision. Kushina was standing in front of him, camera in hand. "Your first date," Kushina squealed. Minato stood next to her, sporting a rather sheepish smile. Naruto imagines his father probably tried to talk Kushina out of her impromptu photo mode, but must have failed. There was another flash and Naruto blinked away, more bright spots. Kushina smiled from ear to ear. "You look good, son." Naruto looked down at his clothes, hoping his father was right. He hadn't dressed up or anything. It wasn't like the two of them were going anywhere fancy after all. Still, he'd been advised not to wear his typical outfit. He wasn't going on a mission instead. The young Namikaze sported black jeans, a thin orange long-sleeve shirt with the clan symbol on the back and black ninja sandals. His headband remained around his neck. Casually outing or not, he had no plan of taking it off, either way. And there was another flash. "Mom!" Okay, Kushina giggled. "You have a good time, okay, Naru?" Treating her well. "Don't talk with your mouth full or say anything rude." And don't use the Orikino Jutsu. Clear? That poor girl would probably die of embarrassment if she saw it. Accept no ramen for 2 months if I hear you acted up. Naruto had a horrified look on his face upon hearing those consequences of bad behavior. 2 months without the food of the gods? He couldn't let that happen. I promise I'll be good and treat her well. I promise. Kushina nodded approvingly at her son's response before she lifted the camera, brandishing it in a slightly threatening manner before her. Now run along before I take another picture. Naruto was gone. Not even a second later, Kushina sighed happily once he was out of the door, closing it somewhat roughly behind him. Minato approached her from behind, wrapping his arms around her in a hug that she leaned into. He's growing up. Kushina could feel Minato's grin against her neck as he said that. It served to make her own smile widen. And I'm so glad to be here to see it. Our little Naru isn't so little anymore. The two stood in comfortable silence, enjoying their closeness and the fact that they were alive with their son. The latest a few moments longer before Minato spoke again. Kushina? You made sure to threaten the shop. The two of them were going to, right? They won't kick Naruto out. Minato heard Kushina snort. You know it. Minato could only smile at the response. He loved his wife. Link break. Naruto moved across the rooftops of the village with practiced ease, avoiding the wrathful eyes of the villagers below as he went above his way. He wasn't far from the Hyuga compound at this point and was thankful he wouldn't need to worry about Hinata's father looking at him with disgust. His parents had told him Hiashi very strictly, but at least wouldn't judge him based on what the villagers thought of him. No, if Hiashi ended up hating his guts, it would be entirely his own fault. Naruto felt that he could live with that. He would prefer that Hinata's father liked him though. As he landed just outside the Hyuga compound, Naruto looked himself over one more time before knocking on the gates. He waited around for what he assumed to be a minute or two before the gates opened. Naruto had been expecting one of the many branch members' family to greet him, leading him to the main family's house shortly after. Hiashi has come to meet him directly instead. Naruto felt his heart leap into his throat. The man before him sported a stony face visage. Power rolled off of him in waves as if he was ready to pounce at any moment. Despite this, Hiashi stood tall, the marks of proper etiquette and high society showing his posture. Where Naruto would compare Hinata's lavender gaze to gentleness and, at his times, trepidation, Hiashi's eyes could only be linked to steel orbs, cold and unwavering. This is Hinata's dad? Naruto thought to himself. There's nothing alike to them. Okay, aside from some slight resemblance, she must have gotten how she acted from her mother. It's the only explanation. Naruto couldn't believe that Hiashi and Hinata were as closely related as they were. It didn't make a lick of sense to him. This man could probably kill him if he just tried to staring at him long enough. His eyes would steal his soul. Naruto knew Namikaze. Oh dear lord, Hinata's killer father is talking to me. Naruto realized the worst part of all this was that he didn't even know why this man was intimidating him so thoroughly. This wasn't a date, right? He observed Hiashi's narrowing his eyes and realized he needed to respond before Hiashi decided his silence was an acceptance of that. Good afternoon, Hyuga-sama. I'm here to pick up Hinata for our outing. Naruto thought he did a pretty good job getting that out despite his nervousness. In truth, he stammered through the entirety of it. Hiashi smirked and Naruto contemplated running for his life. Is this some sort of jutsu? Yes, my daughter has informed me of your outing. She will be out momentarily, which gives us time to talk. Shit. Naruto thought. Do calm down, young man. I just have a question. Surely you understand? Yes, ask away, Hyuga-sama. Hiashi chuckled mentally at the boy stuttering. He was pleased to know that he could instill fear into whom he could only assume would be his eldest daughter's future boyfriend. Eventually hoped that would be the case anyway. He didn't think Hinata was strong enough to lead the Hyuga clan. She didn't fit the role at all. Naruto would certainly go on to do great things and his family line was well worth being connected to. If she married him in the future, she could go on to be the next lady Uzumaki Namikaze, Konoha royalty in sense. The Hyuga would benefit greatly from such a union. Hinata already had feelings for the boy, and while Hiashi didn't practically care for she married for love, it was a plus, he supposed. Good. So, what exactly are your intentions with my daughter, Namikaze? What? Naruto thought. Sorry, what? Naruto hadn't had time to filter his thoughts. Thankfully for him, he hadn't said anything more colorful. It was luck on his part. Naruto had always had a dirty mouth. It wasn't even worth denying. He'd been trying to curb his usual speaking habits lately due in no small part to his parents. Kushina and Minato were trying to make sure he would or could function in higher eloquence of society, and Kurt's remarks certainly wouldn't endear him to anybody. Naruto had complained at first, of course, wondering why he would have to waste his time rubbing shoulders with a bunch of stuffy nobles. He had to meet a decent one, as far as he was aware, in his opinion, and didn't want to deal with them if he could help it. His parents shut him down quickly, letting him know how important it was for him to learn such skills. As Hokage, he would have to meet with people like that often for the benefit of his village. Not to mention his duties as a clan head. He had no choice in the matter, and the prosperity of their clan and Konoha as a whole could hinge on someone adequate and their ability to charm nobles. Naruto already had a late start there, but his folks thought they were making up for it well enough with how often they were drilling such teachings into his head. Begrudgingly, Naruto accepted that they were right and that the information was necessary. At this moment, he accepted it even more. He almost cursed after what Higashi asked him. Naruto knew that wouldn't have gone very well. I mean, nothing, Yuga-sama. I merely wished to pay her back for helping me out during the first exam. She didn't need to assist me, and it was a dangerous thing to do. I couldn't just ignore such a thing. Yashi gave a single nod and hum of response. Clearly, he could see that Naruto wasn't thinking about romance at the moment. He could respect that wholeheartedly. The boy was probably entirely focused on his shinobi career, especially with his parents having returned. Knowing Naruto would try anything it was pleasing, it wouldn't do for his daughter Virtue to be compromised without some sort of formal agreement between reaching and with Naruto's clan. Just in case, after all, if things didn't work out with the boy, he'd have to go look for a decent suitor for Hinata. That wouldn't go very well if she was no longer virgin. A good answer. Further your shinobi career is rather important, especially right now. Yashi asked Naruto a few more questions as they waited until Hinata showed up. The younger Jinchuriki wanted nothing more than to escape Yashi so he can enjoy his image with Hinata. When he noticed Hinata walking towards him, her escort Ko not far behind. Hi Naruto-kun, Hinata greeted as she stepped next to Higashi. Naruto greeted her back, briefly taking the side of her in so as not to be nurtured by her father. Staring probably meant death, and he wasn't interested in dying yet. He had to admit though, Hinata looked very good. He wore a light purple spaghetti striped dress that hugged her waistline before flaring outwards from there. Covering her shoulders was a white short-sleeved half sweater, and adorning her feet were low-waist sandals. Despite it not liking very long for Naruto to tear his eyes away from Hinata's appearance, he realized right then that he was probably lying to Higashi, if only just a little. Hinata was cute. He had to admit that. He realized she was cute ever since he saw her smile during the preliminaries. Something about her in that moment had essentially punched him in the gut and forced him into taking notice of her looks. He would even go as far as to say that she was cuter than Sakura. After having spent so much time with her during the Chunin exams, he could also admit that she was far easier to go along with and get along with as well. Naruto wasn't particularly ready to be with anyone. He knew that. He knew he had a lot of obstacles to overcome in his life, and he wasn't strong enough to protect himself from them yet, let alone someone else. He wanted to focus on improving himself above all else at the moment. Still, he conceded to some of his more teenage desires here. He definitely wanted to get to know Hinata better. Naruto looked Hinata in the eye, taking note of a happy yet anxious smile on her lips. He noticed her fingers poking together, something he'd seen her do on a few occasions before and could easily associate it with her nerves. This was just supposed to be an outing between friends. Eternally, Naruto groaned. My mother was right. Naruto thought. This was totally a date now. Hi, Hinata. That dress suits you. Naruto replied. Hinata's smile grew as her whole face turned red. Naruto scratched his cheek in his own embarrassment as she frilled and riddled with her fingers and looked away from him. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Hinata's response was so soft that the young Namikaze almost missed it entirely. Yashi watched on, giving nothing away as Hinata composed herself and stepped closer to Naruto, leaving Ko's side. Now that she was a shinobi, he didn't need her to join her along the journey on the village. I understand that my daughter will be accompanying you to the village meeting later today, Uzumaki. Naruto briefly wondered why he didn't address him as a Namikaze as he had been before, coming to a conclusion that Ko probably didn't know about his heritage yet. Yes, Yuga-sama. Very well then. Have her back by the 8 o'clock sharp. And you two may go now. And Hinata? His daughter turned back to Higashi, a slight look of curiosity passing across her face. Have a good time. Nodding with a small smile, Hinata and Naruto went off. Link break. Jiraiya leisurely entered the gates of Konohagakure, returning as scheduled. He took inside of the village. Noting that all seemed peaceful, his eyes panned over to the same old buildings and the contents faces of the villagers as they went about their day. He shook his head. These people don't even realize how lucky they are, he thought. They went about their lives thinking his late student wouldn't condone the actions they had taken against Naruto. The fact that young Jinchuriki hasn't snapped and released the Kyuubi was a miracle in Jiraiya's eyes. They're pitiful. With that last thought, Jiraiya took to the rooftops, intent on making his way towards the Hokage Tower so he could get to business out of the way before checking up on Naruto. The Totsanin had no idea what kind of trouble he was about to walk into. Elsewhere, Kushina had a gut feeling she'd need her fry pan soon. Link break. Naruto walked through the village with Hinata was carried out in slight awkward silence. It shouldn't have been this awkward, considering they'd been having conversation briefly that went smoothly, but between realizing this was definitely a date and admitting to himself that he probably liked Hinata as more than just a friend, it was harder for him to talk to her than he thought about it would be. Plus, the villagers were glaring daggers at him for Hinata. That was the main reason she was being so quiet. She always seen how the villagers treated Naruto from afar, but being at the center of it was a different feeling entirely. Unfortunately, it wasn't a feeling she was exactly unfamiliar with. This reminds me of home, Hinata thought. Hinata has her eyes seeming to those of the villagers for years now. Her family had no faith in her abilities. She knew they would take the first chance presented to them to make Hanabi the heir instead of her. She didn't know how she felt about that exactly. Hinata wanted to be the next head, to try and heal the rift between the two branches of the family, but at the same time she wasn't sure she was capable. Her clan had ruined her self-esteem to the point even she wasn't entirely confident in her own abilities. Despite working on her confidence lately, she still wasn't at a point where she could see herself as a strong clan head. Hinata tried to push those thoughts out of the head as she glanced at Naruto. Watching him walk alongside her without even betting an eye to the villagers, the Hyuga heirs couldn't help but wonder how he could still be so strong and sure of himself. She knew how much he'd been through, all the bullying, verbal abuse. The few people would talk to him directly, and being treated like some sort of criminal. Naruto was a para in the village that loved his father. Naruto wasn't sure how long he knew about his parents. She could only guess that it was from around the time he went off to train before the exams, but anything was possible. Does it hurt him more now to know that the village has such a disparity between their feelings on him and his father? She thought. Is that the place, Hinata? Naruto's voice snapped the hairs out of her thoughts as Hinata looked towards where he was pointing. It was a quaint little stall between two long buildings, and Eving covered the seat at the counter. There was no eating, as no one was there. They were, at the moment, something that the both of them were a little relieved about. The owner and the cook saw them approaching and flinched. He seemed a little afraid, in Hinata's opinion, but the look was replaced by a grimace almost immediately. Yes, they make the best cinnamon buns in the village, Hinata replied, her pace quickened without her knowledge. Naruto could tell she was excited and just smiled as he followed her. Taking their seats a moment later, the two of them waited for the owner to approach them. His steps were reluctant, but he never stopped. Plastering a strange smile on his face, the man addressed them. It's good to see you back, little miss. It's been a while. I was beginning to think you found a better place. Hinata's responding giggle made Naruto's heart skip a bit. Never, Otanashi-san. I've just been very busy with the tuning exams. Naruto promised to treat me the next time I came. Otanashi looked at Naruto, his smile wavering for a moment. Naruto immediately rose at a brow in response, voicely wondering why the guy hadn't tried to kick him out yet. Mighty nice of you to treat the little miss here, boy. Otanashi did his best but utterly couldn't conceal some of his rudeness. Naruto questioned why he was putting up with him, but ultimately didn't voice that thought. He didn't want to ruin their date, and pushing the owner until they got kicked out would definitely result in that. It was the least I could do, Otanashi-san. Hinata's amazing, and I'm sure I would have failed the first exam without her help. This is nothing in comparison. The young Namikaze figured he probably laid it on, but bit thick, but the blush that covered Hinata's cheeks made it worth it, he supposed. Otanashi stared at the boy for a moment before simply nodding and turning back to Hinata. The usual, and maybe half that for your friend here? Yes, please, Otanashi-san. Nodding to the year's response, Otanashi walked deeper into the shop and started preparing the food. With the older man now gone, Hinata turned to Naruto. The blonde Jinchuriki stared at Otanashi for a few moments longer. His brow furrowed in confusion, a small frown on his lips. Hinata thought the expression was rather cute on him. She did wish she could kissed the frown away from his face though. Naruto looked towards her right as she blushed from the thought she had. Hinata held her face in the hands, cheeks flamed red from the sheer embarrassment of the situation. She couldn't believe she thought of that. Are you alright, Hinata? Yes. She squeaked, her cheeks reddening further. This is so embarrassing. Right, Naruto said. So, how did you find this place? Naruto wondered. She didn't say anything immediately, instead choosing to focus on claiming her heart by calming it and letting the blood drain from her face a bit. I didn't really, my mother. Naruto trailed as her smile flattered for just a moment. Naruto understood instantly. He talked with his parents as often as he could, wanting to learn all about and their past. They told him everything they could about themselves as long as it wasn't a village secret. Naruto was beginning to learn all about his parents' lives. One such thing he found out was that Kushina was best friends with Hinata's mom, Hitomi. The two of them were teammates alongside Sasuke's mothers. Naruto had wondered why he hadn't grown up closer to Hitomi and her family, but the answer didn't make him happy at all. Hitomi was dead. His mother had only found out shortly after she woke up. He was positive, still disturbed her to no end. He could only imagine it himself. One moment, you're giving all your power to escape years of imprisonment, and just when things seem to be looking up, you find out your two best friends are long dead. Naruto could only acknowledge once again that the world could be immensely cruel. My mother showed me when she was alive. It was my first time out of the compound that I can remember, and she wanted me to make sure I got the best cinnamon buns. They were her favorites too. You see, she was really happy when I took such a liking to them. Father never cared for them much, but since I did, she finally had someone to go eat them with who could keep up with her. Naruto smiled at Hinata's reply. He could hear the affection in her tone. He knew from the way she spoke and how her face softened that Hinata cherished the memories dearly. It was a good thing that she had time with her mother before Hitomi was gone. He decided, even though the memories must hurt sometime, based on the way her eye lit with nostalgic shine, Naruto knew that they brought joy to her more than anything. She didn't let her loss drag her down. Your mom sounds great, Hinata. I would have liked to meet her. You truly would have too. Thanks, she smiled. I think she would have liked you too, Naruto. The two of them chatted for a few moments more before Otonashi brought out 2 plates of cinnamon buns. The smell caught Naruto's attention first. It smelled cinnamon, of course, but it was also warmth. He couldn't put a proper word for it, but it gave him a fuzzy feeling whenever he breathed in it. Otonashi sat placed down, and the two teens thanked him. Naruto immediately got to work on the warm confections as Naruto looked at the treats over. He hadn't expected them to be so large, but they really were. He only had 4 of them on his plate, but he never eaten this much of anything aside from ramen. He glanced over at Hinata and saw that she had 7 of them on her plate. He noted that her hands were sticky and that she just finished swallowing something. She inhaled that. Naruto watched as she quickly devoured her next cinnamon bun, her cheeks full as she smiled in delight and chewed. He could only stare. Naruto had never seen anyone eat anything with such vigor and speed aside from him and his mother when it came down to ramen. Seeing someone else inhale their food was kind of surreal feeling for him. He wondered if this is how people felt when he ate ramen in front of them. He wanted to look away, but he simply couldn't. Eventually, when she was halfway through her 4th bun, Hinata realized Naruto was staring. She blushed to the root of her hair and looked down at her lap. Naruto blinked, then he laughed. Hinata, that was amazing. I never seen anyone eat their food like that, aside from my mom. I don't know about him. Amazing. Father says it is becoming of my station. Naruto snorted at the reply, and he finally took a bite out of his cinnamon bun. His eyes warning, "This is amazing, Hinata. Not as good as ramen, but it's definitely right up there. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Naruto." Naruto only replies with a nod as he quickly went about finishing the first bun. It was nowhere near as quick as Hinata, but he got it there and done. Anyway, about your dad. He's not here, so don't worry about it. I thought that what you did was pretty cool, and I think my mom would have liked it too. Naruto was actually pretty sure that his mother seeing Hinata inhale cinnamon buns would spark some fond memories of Hitomi. He actually figured he would need to introduce the two of them soon, so they could share some stories with Hinata. Hinata's cheeks were dusted a little shade of red as whatever lingering awkwardness there might have been between the two teens ended. Some subjects were slowly moving and they didn't always understand each other, but they were finally able to talk to one another with a little more ease. Naruto had to admit cinnamon buns were excellent icebreakers, as this is where I'm going to be leaving this part of, guys. I hope you like this one, and if you do, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel, as this is Apollo Uchiha, and I'm